That didn't work. All right, welcome to the Data and API show. I missed that intro slide by like 2 seconds. I'm still not used to this whole stream stuff, but thanks for joining. We are happy to have you here today. I am joined by a very special guest. I'm joined by Mr. Jamie Barton. Mr. Jamie Barton, you are on the stage.
Hello.
Thanks for
Good
coming.
to see you. Pleasure to be here.
Jamie, for all the people out there, everybody who is watching right now, entire audience, what do you do? What are you known for, and where do you work? Give us the rundown.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Jamie. I was a software engineer for a few years, turned developer advocate, and moved more into developer relations. So really, I spend a bunch of my days either writing documentation, talking to users, and getting their feedback and trying to shape the product that we're building over at Graph CMS. So we're a headless CMS platform with a content editor, and in my side, on the side, I kind of work with GraphQL, create videos, and a bunch of other things.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a number of GraphQL resources, one of which we're working with tonight, CartQL. We're not going to give away too much of what that's about just yet, because that will be featuring heavily later on. But also GraphQL WTF, which I'm not going to say out loud because this is a kid-friendly show. But so you've got a lot of resources out there. So if anybody's wanting to know more about GraphQL and things that it does and what it doesn't do and what it's going to do next, Jamie is a great person to follow for all things GraphQL.
Thank you. I've just started out on the journey with that. So I'm excited to see what we can do in the GraphQL space and the content we can create around it, and get more people using it.
Yeah, great. So on the menu today, we have a rapid prototype session. So we're going to kind of create sort of a e-commerce project, because where you were developer before was a little bit into e-commerce.
Yeah, it's kind of my background.
Yeah. Even built the Swag Store demo for Graph CMS, which is also a nice piece there if you want to see a cool real world example of something to build. So yeah, e-commerce is definitely where your space is. We're gonna take it from zero to query today, and just kind of see how far we get. To kick it off, we're going to start with a totally random store idea. So for the audience, for those that are watching, we need a kid-friendly product idea or family-friendly product idea that we can model a store off of. So while I get my screen sharing here, we're looking for somebody in the audience to post a comment about a product or store idea. And if you don't choose, it will either end up being beer or pizza, because that's the only stuff I know how to do.
Yeah. I seen that you've you run a competition with tips or treats, was it, or something like that?
Tips and tricks with Hasura. Yeah.
Maybe there could be a store to buy a tip or a trick.
That's a good idea. That's a really good opportunity to call it out too. So we have the tips and tricks contest running right now, and that will be running through the end of November. And basically all you need to do is you can, let me actually get the post here for the actual Hasura blog. So the Hasura blog tips and tricks. All you got to do is essentially, sign up for the contest. And you can just post anything that you're doing with Hasura, anything that you find interesting, building with it, database tricks or whatever with the API layer. So that's a pretty cool opportunity. We've got some sweet swag. Everybody who enters is going to get a t-shirt. So sign up and try it out. But I'm going to go ahead and post this link here inside of the chat so everybody can have access to that. And we'll even boost that here on the screen for just a quick minute here for everybody to see. But if you go there, it's a pretty cool thing to try out. Awesome. All right, promo aside. Today, I wanted to test out a new tool that I saw as kind of the promo one. So we're going to have to go with, I guess, pizza. Or we're going to do a tips and tricks store. Buying tips and tricks. Yeah, we can do tips and tricks. That's fun. So we'll do a tips and buying tips and tricks marketplace to buy and sell side projects.
That would be a very popular marketplace.
Yeah. To sell ideas or to actually sell the projects themselves.
Unfinished
No,
projects.
you know, I said we needed a comment. We got a comment, so we're going to run with that one. We got a side project store, so you guys can start ideating on name ideas for that. What we're going to do is test out this tool here that I haven't actually used before, but I've wanted to, so I thought this would be a cool opportunity to try it together. This is Draw SQL. The theory I have been told is we can sort of build a diagram here and then actually get SQL code that we can use to quickly bootstrap our database. So let's try it. So we're starting here. Going to go ahead and hit new diagram here. Kind of cool. I've got a little team here called Hasura Education. We'll do a new diagram. We're going to choose Postgres as the flavor. That's a pretty clear onboarding. We're going to call this the side project store. Now, just in case they actually make that my database name, we're going to go with the underscore because I kind of like that. It's going to be public, so we'll just go ahead and go with that. So I'm not dropping any cash on this. All right, we got the basic thing here. So yeah, we can go ahead and just start with tables right off the bat. So what do we need? We need a probably project.
Yeah.
What's that?
Probably project for a table.
All right, we're going to go ahead and make a new table here. We'll call this project. That was pretty. Probably go with lowercase names. I'm not quite sure how smart it is when it exports as SQL, so we'll just kind of stick with that. Make it be as wide as possible. So we've got the ID field, which is going to be an integer. And do we want to have that be, can I make that be auto incrementing here? Maybe not. So we might do, we'll see, but we may end up dropping that once we're inside of Hasura and just add an auto incrementing ID later. But we'll go ahead and test it out for now. We have the ID field. We need a text field probably, I'd guess. Like a name field.
Yeah, name.
What else? What else we need?
Some kind of Boolean for whether the side project is finished or not. I don't know. I feel seen. How do we? Well, let's go with description. For the quick one here, what do we need in terms of? Let's go and spell description correctly because that won't make me go crazy later on. We need another column, so some kind of status. That's not a bad idea. That might be a good opportunity for like an enum table, right? So if we had some kind of a status, basically. Yeah.
Now, this is where we're going to start getting ourselves in a tiny bit of trouble. I'm going to go ahead and make this be a table relationship, not a proper enum. Later on, we can make that be a proper enum, but we'll just go ahead and do that. In this case, it will be a text, and we can add some constraints on that later on. Let's go ahead and see if we can drag or draw out a new connection here. Will it just make it for us? Probably not. Okay, so another project here. We'll go ahead and call this project status. And we will go with actually just giving it a text that's unique as the I'm trying to remember what Hasura calls their enum table field. Hasura enums, what do they call them? So it's just you can have up to 2 columns on an enum table. One is essentially a description. So name, that's actually what the previous one was. So we can go ahead and say, let's just insert into, it's just value, right?
Value, yeah.
Just value, yeah. So we'll go ahead and go with value here. Text is unique. And then we'll add another column here called the comment, which will be nullable, and also text.
And is that internal to Hasura, that comment?
It knows what to do with it, so it'll show it up in the console, but it's not, and it'll map that to like an enum hint. So we'll go ahead and just go with this. All right, that's kind of pretty. We got this kind of thing going on here, so we can go ahead and link. In this case, our text, we can link to value here as a 1-to-1. I mean, they're probably a many to one, right?
Many to one.
Because we're going to be. Look at that.
That's cool.
That's pretty. So we got a project. We need to have people that own these things or are buying these things, right? Jamie, why should we not use the name user for our table?
Well, yeah, it depends what we're. It depends.
Well,
what we're
I will say it is probably a good practice to not name your user table user, because there are a lot of services out there of different levels of legacy or even newer ones that you just want to try to avoid any risk of collision. So let's create a new table here with a different name other than user. That will be, what should we call it? Like
what? Yeah. What are we going to do with the user? What are we going to do with the user? What's this? What we're going to do?
So they're going to be either the owner of projects or a buyer of projects.
Yeah. Cool.
So
then they'll have a name, and could we
like app user find table name?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, go ahead and go with text there. And we'll add another column here for now that will give the just neat, I don't know, email text. Probably fine for now, huh?
Yeah. Do we create at this point projects inside of here, and can we link that to the other project table here?
So when you say projects in here, like another
so within app user table would have something for projects, or would we put inside a project an owner or a buyer ID?
Well, see, you're talking about, you're thinking as a user of the very elegant Graph CMS interface.
So we're gonna have
which is very pretty.
Yeah,
join table of some kind here. Yeah. So we're gonna, but it's the right direction. So we're gonna go make a new table here. So we'll go ahead and call this user projects, which will be one-to-one relationships between the project ID and the user ID. And maybe we'll just keep it consistent here so we don't get ourselves in a problem. So we'll go ahead and make that, and we'll make one more actually here. I will actually call this one the project ID. I'll leave this one as ID. I know not everybody gives their through tables unique identifiers. I do. And I know you could do this with like a computed key. I still do it anyways. So, project ID. There we go. All right. Because, these don't live forever. And so I'm not optimizing it just yet. All right. So we're going to go ahead and try making our through table here. So we're going to do, see if we can maybe try and position these in a way that'll be nice. I wonder if there's like an auto formatting feature. There might be. This is pretty slick, I have to say. I find that pretty cool.
Yeah.
We'll say user projects app user is connected to, here. So we'll go like that. And then we'll go ahead and say that the project ID is connected to the project ID. So what we got. So that's a one-to-one relationship, which works just fine for us.
It could be
just
many,
me.
One to many really, but to keep it simple.
You mean like multiple users inside of the like a project could have multiple owners?
Yeah, and potentially the other way as well. Like
Well, what you would do, right, is you would have like multiple entries here, right? So you would have user 1, 2, 3, and you would have an entry in user projects 1, 2, 3. User 1, 2, 3 all pointing to the same project, and then that's where Hasura comes in, is it makes that smart and gives us the mapping, cool. Right?
Nice, yeah, that's cool.
I think you got the database skills on top of me, so does that seem correct, or am I missing something here?
No, I think that users projects table would handle that, right?
Yeah,
you would just manage that.
Try it.
If we create, if we created a UI for this, you're managing that user projects table. So any mutations that Hasura would generate for those, you just interact with that, and then that would relate to the projects and users, I think. But yeah, it looks fine. Maybe there is another table, or maybe we just keep it simple, but maybe we could add some kind of way to inquire about these. But I don't know how far if we want to dive into this.
Yeah, go ahead and carry that thought out a little bit. That's interesting. What do you mean by that? What would that look like? I wonder if I can zoom the scale on this a little bit.
Yeah, so if we had another table that was for maybe an inquiry, or I don't know, say someone wants to inquire to purchase this side project or make a bid or something. Like there's tons of different tables we could create here, but I think maybe it's a nice other one that we could add is an inquiry or a message, some kind of message that a guest can ask, right? And that's linked to a project, and then the user can see what messages were left on the project or something. I don't know.
Now, if we were to take that up another level of abstraction, and we have the mental concept of like a bid, so you have basically, I'm interested and now I want to buy it. Would you make those two interest levels be two different table entries, or would you have something be more like an inquiry? Then all of a sudden has a Boolean with offer, or has offer values on it, that because I could say, hey, I'm interested in that. Can I buy it from you for $5? Is CartQL for sale for $5? And then I could make this request to you, and like, I don't know. What do you think? Kind of, what's the right way to handle that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Actually, I think it really depends on what the user experience looks like for wanting to inquire and all the features around that. Maybe keeping them separate is nice and explicit, that I can create these relationships between them, and I know, I'm guessing Hasura has some kind of counting, aggregate counting part of the API. That would be a lot easier, but I guess you can filter that stuff, so that might not be correct with that logic. But I think being more explicit with the separate tables is nice, but also having Booleans on a bid that has a message. It could be, because like you could make a bid, right, to bid a price, but it feels like implementation detail. It could be that the message, what you're sending, although it's a bid on the front end, it could be a message with a field for the bid amount. So you could go
because it could be something else too. It could be like, hey, you want to collab on something else?
Yeah.
Or whatever. So I think message probably makes sense here. And I like that. So let's go ahead and just quickly prototype out. We've got a name, or we got a sender, which is going to be the ID. We'll leave it there. Do I have the incrementals? I'm going to have to make those later on.
It's
going to force me.
Could just be text. It depends how advanced you want to take it and connect things.
We want to make it be connected to the person, right?
Yeah.
So we can add another column here, and the receiver. Well, IB for E except for C, everybody, just in case you were not sure about that. All right, and then we have the message. It'll be then the text. And we maybe have a connection to bid ID. Just looking down the road a little bit here. We'll go ahead and put this one over here, and we'll connect the sender to an app user ID and the receiver to app user ID. And then we'll just make one more table here because we want to make sure we're keeping this chucking along here. So we're going to go ahead and say one more new table. Let's call this a bid. And we'll leave this with a unique ID there and add one more column here. And we'll say bidder or app. Yeah. Kind of messed up my mechanism there because I have sender and receiver as fields. Yeah. Okay. App user ID.
We'll just say sell this bidder side project.
Yeah, we'll just sell this one. Exactly. Yes, and then we will go ahead and say, what we could do is we could just do it this way for now and make it be that you can only create a bid that is connected to a message. Or would that be creating fragments in your database that would be potentially floaters that would be dangerous?
Well, potentially. You'd have to... Yeah, I mean, you could cascade some deletes, right? With Hasura. Can you configure all of that? Yeah, I mean, this is just a side project, right? So I don't think we need to be too precise with the data model.
Very good. So this one's going to be for sale here pretty soon. I do need to fix this because that will come back to bite me later on when I want to have a nice GraphQL API. So I'm going to go ahead and name this as app or mess, or what do I want to call this? Sender user ID. Probably is helpful enough. Receiver user ID. And that's probably fine. And then we have the bid ID here that'll just connect right over there. And we're going to go ahead and call this price just to make it nice. Now, this is where we're going to leave off our model for now, unless anybody sees glaring issues that can be fixed in the amount of time that we have. Jamie, so why am I not creating a cart model or a, anything of those kind of natures? Why would I not be doing that in this context?
Very good question. And that's because we live in the world of best of breed microservices. So we can use another service for this. And that's in GraphQL as well.
Not GraphQL, whatever that is. We want to look at CartQL. There we go. Which has a sick logo, by the way. CartQL, Jamie, tell us about CartQL.
Yeah, I built this a few years ago. This is a side project. This was something which was really just built to scratch an itch. I was either having to store cart state on the client, but then I think at the time I'd built something with React, but then I was using another project, I think at the time in Vue, and having to re-implement all of that was like, I don't really want to do that. Why don't I just kind of leverage GraphQL? I was using GraphQL anyway. Why don't I just build an API as a service to do this? So what this does is it has a bunch of mutations to add items, update them, delete them, increase quantities, decrease quantities, and many other kind of setting other things around metadata, and fetching carts for anything as well. So if you want to fetch a new cart or an existing cart, you just pass in an ID. I built this really to be something which you didn't need authentication for. So you can just use this API without kind of authenticating. There is something which you can pass along API keys for, and that's really to connect a webhook. So if someone completed adding an item to the cart, you could trigger a webhook to, do something in the background, or if it was to check out, it could be to send them a confirmation email or something. So yeah, that's pretty much what it is. It's very simple, very basic, has a few mutations. All the documentation is here, and it's /docs. But yeah, there's it's pretty much it. So to get going, you literally just open the playground and begin using it. So if you scroll up on the homepage and you go to one of the examples, let's just say, scroll down a little bit. Yeah, if you click on add item, and you can use one of the two icons in the bottom right, either to open it in the playground or to copy. So you could just copy that or open it up. This will pre-fill that mutation for you. What I would recommend at this point is maybe just changing the cart ID to, I don't know, Jesse in the mutation input. Yeah. Cool. And if you go ahead and run that.
Made it unique.
Yeah. And that will return you, at the moment, it returns you kind of the top level cart state. So it's telling you the subtotal. Now, if you run that again, the subtotal will be increased. And it kind of returns some metadata around the total items it has, but it's only got one unique item because the cart ID we added, we haven't changed. We've only, the ID for the cart item hasn't changed, but the cart ID remained the same. So you can expand many things in here in the query of the response of the query on the mutation. You could fetch all of the items if you wanted to.
We're already getting grand total. What's the difference between grand total and the?
Yes, the one is without the shipping costs or taxes added. Then there's a tax total, which will give you the tax totals, and the grand total contains everything. And subtotals is everything without tax, I think.
And at the moment, there's no tax for this cart.
Yeah, you can add tax items, but I was in the process of removing that, so people could just create another line item for tax, and that seemed to be a bit more intuitive than having this enum.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, bunch of things to kind of figure out still with that. But you can, what I've done with the grand total here is that returns an amount, also the formatted amount. You can also fetch the currency if you want to kind of construct it in any other way. So you can kind of explore what the currency is either for the cart or for individual cart items as well, which is cool. So there's quite a lot kind of packed in here. If you're working with multiple currencies, this will support that. I think there's like an enum. There's a bunch of different enums for the currencies you can use.
That's really cool. Let's see if we can get this connected into an actual project here using the remote schemas, because this is a GraphQL API. So is there anything to connect this that would be helpful for us? Like, do we need to track cart IDs?
I mean, in the front end, you would track the cart ID possibly just in browser storage. So if they return, you would fetch the same cart. I think in the example that we've got here in DrawSQL, if somebody could send a message to actually inquire about it, like to bid on something, but to actually get to the point in which you could have a different. I'm guessing you could have something completely different for users where they can either bid or they could just go through and say, here's a dozen side projects for sale. I'll add that to the cart. I'll add that to the cart. I'll add that to the cart. They've got 3 side projects by Jesse, and they add another 3 by Jamie, and then they can use the cart endpoint to fetch all of those. And what I'd probably do is that's when you would stitch the API for carts, or add the remote schema for those, and the IDs of the cart items would be the project IDs. So that would be a way you could kind of associate them, to my understanding with this.
So should we make another table then? Another through table here that would be essentially the user cart ID. What would be the right way to do this? So we have a through table and we have
what you probably what I've seen people do is they would just have an order table, and the order would contain the project, the user, and maybe a JSON field for the cart, perhaps, I don't know. And then that's kind of just immutable. They take a snapshot of that cart, and then it's forgotten about. I don't think we really need to associate the carts or persist them after someone's bought something. That would belong in an order table. But if you wanted to log in, yeah, you could store the cart ID for that user. They could have multiple carts.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's up to you.
Let's do that. Let's make a user carts. User carts that will have the column for the app user ID. And then we will have the cart ID, which is that what type is that on the CartQL there?
It's an ID.
UUID or?
It can be anything. It's just a string, so it's just of the type ID. So just string really.
It's a string.
Yeah.
This will hopefully not be a problem with merging. Is there any other unique identifier?
Not that I know of. Everything's just IDs, and obviously it supports. It has the node query in there.
Okay.
But that is it.
So we'll go ahead and make that be a text, you said, right?
Yeah.
What we might be able to do is go back into Hasura later and change that to custom type to see if that won't have any name clashes. We can try that, but we'll see. All right, so we need to go ahead and connect this here to our app user, over to our app user ID there. And then card ID will just be a text field. That should do it. So we're going to go ahead and save this, and we're going to see if we can actually export this thing into some kind of GraphQL thing. So, or some kind of SQL thing. So if we can go ahead and try, maybe share, file export, PostgreSQL. And now what? Oh, maybe I need to zoom out here.
There we go.
Download that. And while we're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and boot open a cloud project from Hasura here. Go ahead and bootstrap a new one. Go ahead and use the we'll use the paid tier for now because there's some interesting things there, and I can change the region here to something a bit closer to me so we can speed up some operations. And we'll choose we're just calling this side project.
Side project 1, 1, 1, 2, final.
Right.
1, 1.
I'll bet that name's taken. No, it's not. There we go. I have the only side project on Hasura Cloud. It's good to know. So we're going to run with now is while it's provisioning here. I don't think I need to do anything else at the moment. When I was talking about the concern of a collision, yeah, sometimes that happens. We'll refresh this 1 second. Sometimes the console thinks that it's done sooner than it is. So we give this here 1 minute. So we'll close that tab down, wait till this is done. Let's try that, see if that's working now. Well, that's fun. Side project is already up for sale. Maybe I can change the region on this. No, so let's go ahead and wait and see. Okay. The problem may have been that I had turned off. This is an interesting little bug to have a look at later on. It may be that because I'd had that turned off by default, it wasn't able to do its initial query. Kind of an interesting use case. And then the browser is remembering a state of the configuration that I have here. So that's kind of an interesting little thing. Who knows? Anyways, we're in. I'm going to go ahead and strap a database on here real quick from Heroku. And then we're going to have a look at that SQL table. This has kind of become my new default for opening up random files. I'm going to just open up a blank thing there and find that downloaded SQL file here. So we can just kind of drag this up to here usually. There it is. So there's our statement.
Nice. That's really good.
And we're going to go ahead and copy that and go back over to our database. And we're going to go to SQL here. And I may actually have persisted here the trigger to update. Let me see here. Table only public user add constraint user email unique. Just had Apple interrupt me here. No, it's just setting the updated thing. I don't think I have this statement for auto incrementing. Okay, well, not gonna worry about it for right now. Sequence name, there it is. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and steal that line because I'm gonna need that for the auto incrementing IDs. I'm totally confused here.
I'm just fast.
Start with one. Okay, table, min-max. That's the statement there. Okay. So I need to update later on. I think I can actually do that as well from the console. So I'm just going to do it that way. It's a little bit more intuitive. So we're going to go ahead and run this to see if that'll actually import without any issues. So executing that query. That looked like that worked out like magic. So we're going to go ahead and go over to public here. We're going to just track all of these relationships here. And so with that drawing behavior, we were able to design a database and then import the SQL statement and then automatically track them. So inside of Hasura, theoretically, we'd be able to do something kind of like user, our app user. And then we can do something kind of like the messages and the actual message. So all those relationships are already created. And so that's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and have a quick look at the data model here and see if we can just make sure that we've got a couple of auto incrementing IDs. Let's see what happens if we go to the modify here. I'm going to go ahead and edit this. It's funny when I do the screen sharing with this tool here. What happens very often is that I get I can't scroll anymore. So well, who knows? So
I find it very interesting, very, very helpful actually for someone maybe who's not familiar with modeling databases, or even if you are, but you kind of just want a visual way to represent something. The tool that you had open for drawing that SQL, I think, being able to export it as SQL and then import that into Hasura is really great. Like I was able to use something that completely different to draw everything out and then bring that straight across. I think that's really cool that you've got the power to do that, and it creates all of that stuff, all of those tables automatically. I really like that.
Yeah. What I'm trying to do is grab the frequently used ID. What's annoying is I already have a column named ID. So I can't get the auto incrementing magic here without having to actually look up the syntax. So what we might do here is, for the sake of time, what you would often come across, and I'm going to go ahead and just kind of just show it real fast. If you were to make a table from scratch here, you could choose from any number of these other ones here. So if I go to this integer auto increment, and I go ahead and call that unique, and I'm going to go ahead and call this just a steal table so that I can grab that primitive. I want to see exactly what the syntax is for that. Syntax at or near something that it doesn't like. What does it not like? That's actually interesting. Details.
I don't know if it was when you clicked into the column.
Maybe I'm going to go ahead and refresh that because I may have goofed something. Let's have a quick look. So we'll call this again the steel table. I'm going to add a auto incrementing big int, which happens to be the ID type that I have, and we'll make this a unique one. So we'll go ahead and hit add table. That seemed like that was happier. Okay, so we look at the steel table here just so we can have a look at what it wants to call those things. So it's actually creating creating the sequential incrementer as well under the hood. So I'm not going to worry about implementing that right now in this amount of time. But if you were to do the table from here, you'd be able to add that in no problem, or just make this get the SQL statement and add that. But we're running a little bit tight on time. I want to see about actually adding the remote schema here. So we're going to go ahead and just delete this table, and we'll call that a day on that one because we can just do a couple of text fields by hand. So here now we want to actually go ahead and make a connection to the user carts with the remote schema. So from here, if we want to add the CartQL, we would go to the playground. Is that where we get the data from?
Yeah, not the homepage yet. Whatever.
And then we add this here. And we're not going to add any headers, but you're saying we could add a header here if we wanted to use that to sort of authenticate for the webhooks?
Yeah, I think at cartql.com/register, you can enter your email and a webhook endpoint, and every time something happens, it will send a webhook there.
Okay, it makes a payload.
Yeah,
nice.
We don't need that.
All right, let's go ahead and add this schema, or we'll go ahead and call this the art. A safe name, you think?
We'll find out.
All right, so let's go ahead and look at our relationships now on the data. So if we go to the cart user carts here. So this is where I'm actually a little bit wondering if this whole demo idea is actually going to work. We're going to go to the relationships here. We're going to add a remote schema relationship. And if we come down here, we're going to go ahead and say that this is the cart data into the cart. So we're going to go to the cart model, and we're going to try to connect the ID from the column cart ID. Now this is where we might have an issue because the type declared by your API is ID, and the type here is text. So this is where I think we may actually have an issue. So if we go ahead and save that, it worked.
Cool.
What you know? That's cool.
That's cool.
Let's try. I know that you got a little bit tight on time here. Do you got 5 minutes for us to try to add some fake data real quick?
Yeah. Go ahead.
All right, let's go ahead and try and add some quick fake data. What's that?
Yeah, no, it's fine. All good. I was going to suggest a modification, but it's all good.
Oh yeah, what was that?
No, it's fine. We've already done it. It was that user carts table. I thought we hadn't created that, but we have.
We have. All right. So I'm going to give everybody your your email address. That's not a real. It might be a real email address, but it's not going to be what you expect, especially because I misspelled Jamie too. So whatever. It's all good. We're going to go ahead and add a user ID 1. We're going to go ahead and add a user cart. Now, can I identify the cart ID when I run a mutation for adding an item?
Yeah. If it doesn't exist, it'll create it for you.
Let's go ahead and make a project here that we can add to the cart. We'll do that. So do I need to make a connection to the items ID to the project ID from CartQL?
Potentially you could. Potentially yes. A project. You could have you could add a field to the project.
Actually, that wouldn't really make sense here in this case, right?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think the
Because
cart, what we need is from cart item, we need a way to reference back to the project. But
what we need is a relationship from yours to ours, and that's not currently supported in Hasura, but it's actually has an RFC for that exact feature right now, where we'd be able to add relationships onto remote schemas. So for the exact use case of when you add an ID of a project we have here, you'd have that relationship. You could do that through actions, where you would essentially have a remote schema, and then you would be able to, or you would synthesize the remote schema behavior and then bring back the data. In this case, we are not going to be able to do that for this specific feature, but we'll make this be as close as we can here. So
yeah, right.
Let's go ahead and make a project that we could add to the cart. And so we're going to go ahead and just add a table here. So we're going to go ahead and call this project 1. Name is side project. But we're gonna, because it's because we're creative people, we're gonna do it like this.
Oh yeah. I can hear the VCs already.
Yeah. I was going to say something, but I don't want to actually make anybody call mad. So we're going to just call this coins. We're going to stay from crypto entirely in this call. We're going to do side projects for those that know. All right. And the status is a relationship, which we don't actually currently have. So we'll go ahead and call this one, I don't know, half-baked. Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Project status is mad. And I think it's not nullable, if I remember right. We can... I think I get the project status here real quick. So project status, half-baked, there we go. And then we're going to go to, much like this API, and then we're going to go to the project again, and we're going to insert a row on the project, which again was 1, and that was side project, and then it was, running out of time, and then half-baked. So this should allow us to be able to insert that. Very good. And so what we can do now is create trying to think of what else we need in the API here to connect things, especially connecting the so we'll create the user cart.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and make one of those.
Will we need a user first?
Now, do we need the cart ID already? So what you would probably have to do is you would have a behavior where you would make the mutation for making a cart item, and then you would store the response. So we kind of need to quickly create a cart, or we can potentially see if this cart's already there. It is. So if we take that ID and we store that here, then what we should be able to do is looking at my user, do I see what I called his relationship to the cart, or their relationship to the cart? So if I go to the app user, what's its relationship to user carts? So user carts is what it's called. We're going to go ahead and just change this title to cart. Carts plural, so that way we're able to just kind of have a nicer API name. So what we should be able to do now is actually drill down inside of our API, with the user, go down inside of the cart and be able to find the product information that we had available through this API nested inside of our single API here. So if we go with user, go with carts, and from there, we should immediately start to see the cart data, which is what we call that relationship. And then we can go ahead and see the grand total.
Cool.
Both formatted. And if everything works,
cool.
We see the thing. Let's put a name on that real quick. Siri, quiet. Mr. Apple keeps interrupting me here. We'll go ahead and go with name and run that one more time. So,
cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
That's a remote schema. That's rapid prototyping, an e-commerce platform. I mean, that's actually essentially almost a full-fledged e-commerce API. We are just at the edge of time there, so we're not going to be able to flesh it out too much there. But that was 40-ish minutes of the actual coding part to get a full-blown e-commerce API. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like the bringing those two schemas together and being able to kind of right now you can go one way, but being able to go the other way, I think is going to be amazing. So
that is going to be mind-blowing.
Maybe we should follow up on this and extend this so when like here we can get all of the cart items, and then for each of the cart items, instead of just getting a name that we pass in, we actually reference back to the project and get the project name and the price and everything else we have.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it'd be a lot of fun. So if you want to see that, let us know on our different social medias. That would be a really fun follow-up channel. Little sneak mention, we actually will be having pretty cool new features coming up here soon, like some adjustments and updates to the remote schema functionality that are going to be pretty rad. But yeah, thanks again, Jamie, for joining me today. That was a lot of fun and really always good to code jam with you. I like that. And yeah, thanks for those that watched. We had fluctuating people. There was like spikes for a while there, so there was some good numbers there in the middle, and that was fun. Awesome. But we will see y'all at the next one, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.